How to put braided line on your spinning reel at home. You're going to need a few tools. You should have a little braided line scissors. Well, most kid scissors will cut braided line. You should have a nail clip, a glove or a rag, and your braided line. You need some mono line for backing, which I already put on here. You would tie the backing to your spool, wind on a few wraps. If you want to wind up 100 yards, you can do that, and then put your braided line. If you don't put a backing and you tie your braided line directly to the spool, and you're fishing and you're catching trout, you might be able to get a whole bunch of them in. But if you wind up hooking a big fish like a permit or a 40-inch snook, what happens is the braided line is so slippery, when the drag is tight, it's going to slide around the spool and you're going to think that the drag is broken. You must put a backing when you're using braided line. Now in the old days, they used to put a piece of tape and then let the braided line dig into the tape and that would hold it. The reason we don't recommend that is because when you put the tape, it usually stays glued to the reel spool and salt gets on there, it creates corrosion, so it doesn't breathe as well. Monofilament is the best thing to do. And the size of monofilament depends on how much backing you're going to put. If you plan on putting a little bit of braided line and you're actually going to use the backing where the fish will get into the backing and take that, you want to make sure that the backing is equivalent or more than the braided line you're putting on there. You don't want to put a 10-pound test backing of 100 yards and have a 30-pound braid, because what's going to happen is the 10 pounds going to break when the fish gets to that. So you want to try to make it equivalent or a little more. So usually what most people do on average, if they're inshore fishing, they're going to put 150 to 200 yards of braided line on the reel. So I put some backing. I'm going to be using about a 15-pound test braided line here. So I put a 20-pound backing. All you need is a few wraps to cover the reel spool so it doesn't slip. Then you can tie a uni knot or an Albright knot or whatever knot you like to the line backing to your braided line. And then you're slowly going to put it on. The same way that you put on the monofilament, you want the spool with the label facing up, and you want it to come counterclockwise so it comes on the reel. With braided line though, you're going to have to put a lot more tension on the line. So it's good to use a glove and wrap the braided line twice around your hand and then put a lot of tension on it. And you want it to go about 1/8 to the rim. With braided line, after you put it on, it's easier to cut with a braided line scissor. But when you tie your line to line, since you have the backings monofilament, you can use your little nail clipper to cut the monofilament. And you want to cut those tabs down as close as possible. Now, if you're going to use 100 yards of monofilament and 100 yards of braided line, remember that make sure that that knot is really secure, because that's where it's going to break when the fish gets back to that backing. But today's, because braided line is expensive, that's why people only put that 100 or 200 yards on there. Me personally, I like to put as much braided line as possible, so when I get to the backing, it's pretty much if I'm there, I'm going to probably lose that fish.